Are we good? Yeah?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Right, so coming to the end now of 3 days of this. I remember back a good few years ago, either in Milan or Buenos Aires, where Sandy and Sarah were trying to convince me that they would that a course like this would work. We've done it for a couple of years, and then this year we've done something a bit different. So it's not just me droning on. Now it's me and Steve droning on, which is interesting. But it's interesting for me because, you know, I have my way of doing this stuff, and it's interesting to hear other people describe complex things and try and make them understandable as well. And I'm certainly going to take something from that, and I'm going to plagiarize Steve horribly in my modules and in the future. But I thought just to say a few things about, you know, the core thing about this course was really about trying to help people to be better users of evidence. And a big part of that, and I've been convinced for a good few years, really since I left the clinical world and was forced to be a researcher, was that one of the big challenges in the professions is research literacy, is actually becoming confident enough to pick up a paper and be able to make a nuanced judgment. And not feel like you're either chancing it or winging it, or need to defer that responsibility again to another authority. And, you know, we've done it now with a trial and with some observational studies and with a systematic review. But one of the things I think that comes across when you do that stuff is that the way you do it, my clicker's not working.
Okay.
I'll do it from there. I'll do it from here. Mm-hmm. Is that the way you do it across lots of different designs, the key questions are pretty much the same, right? So the first thing you ask, technical problems.
My computer's like, you're done.
Yeah, get out of town. Stop talking. Get out of town.
That is super weird. Yeah, can you just click? I don't know why all of a sudden it's...
So the first thing we did, and the first thing we got you to do, was to try and define a research question, largely because just to illustrate that it's never as straightforward as it looks on paper. But, you know, is this a good question? Is this a question that is answerable through research? Can I nail the question that I'm interested in down so that I can better search for the evidence? And then when I've got that evidence, are they really asking that question that I want to answer? Once you've got that, what is the best type of design to answer this type of question? And we've covered that in some detail. And then, you know, are they clear what their question is given their design, particularly when it comes to the observational studies? And Steve went into detail about that, you know, causation, prediction, description. Have they really recruited a group of people that are reasonable enough that I can transfer these findings to the sorts of people that I want to make decisions about? Are the measures good and valid and tell me something that's important to me and the patients that I want to make decisions about? Was the process of the study as rigorous as it needed to be? Have we got a problem?
Sorry, we apparently have a little tech problem.
It's very interesting.
Maybe we should take it as a sign.
Steve. Is that the one? Yeah, so that's what you're doing.
Too much evidence in one go.
How's it look now? Yeah.
Just to start again?
No, it all should have been recording, I think.
Yeah.
If not, we'll just, hold on. Okay, yeah.
That's working now, right? Good. So again, we good?
Yeah.
So, you know, was the process of that study as rigorous as it reasonably could be? Were the biases that we know can make things go awry that could be controlled for? Were there any glaring errors in that study that we think really undermine our trust in it? And is this statistical analysis an appropriate approach? And then once you've got there, which is, what is the question? Is the design proper? And do I believe how they've gone about it will get good results? What are the results in terms of size, precision? Do you think the authors interpret it reasonably? Is there signs of spin? Or do you think what they're giving you really is a fair reflection? Actually, though, the point about that is you don't need to ask that question once you grow in your own confidence in analysing the methods and results, because your interpretation is the one that matters in that situation. You no longer delegate responsibility to the researcher. And what does that mean for my clinical practice? Does it mean something for my patients? And just again, remembering that hierarchy of evidence that we use as a shortcut, like a surrogate marker of the value of a piece of information, only holds if you've looked at it beyond the label of RCT or systematic review or meta-analysis and said, well, is it well performed? Was it good enough to really judge my practice? That's why the CAST tool is so good, right? Because the number of times it gave you the option of putting the study in the bin, finding something else. And doing that isn't easy, and it requires practice and a broad range of skills. And it's a challenge of measured judgment and moving beyond trying to just find problems to weighing up strengths and weaknesses to recognize the uncertainty. And the more you do it, the better you get. And the problem sometimes with courses like this is you go and do it, but then, when you go and use evidence in the future, life gets in the way, life is busy, and we sometimes revert back to those things of just reading the conclusion of the abstract, just taking the researcher's word for it. Actually, I think we saw some pretty clear examples in the last couple of days where we perhaps wouldn't want to do that, because if we did that, we would have the opposite of the right answer, right? And sometimes when you scrutinize in papers, it can feel like negativity when we're recognizing the biases and when we're worrying about publication bias and when we're suspecting that something might have been done right, that we're just being kind of grumpy and negative. But it's not, is it? It's about being a very positive process of trying to locate the information that can really help us be less wrong. But we can't shortcut that scrutiny, I think. And there's a great line from Richard Feynman, and it was in his report for the Challenger shuttle disaster, and he filed a minority report to the report about how that went because he wasn't happy with the initial report, because what he saw, or what he felt he saw, was a kind of institutional tendency to bury bad news or avoid uncomfortable truths about certain things. And right at the end of the report, he wrote, "For a successful technology, reality must take precedence over public relations, because nature cannot be fooled." And the point is saying, it doesn't really matter if we're dealing with a health technology, any technology, and every treatment is essentially a health technology. We can ignore difficult information all day long, and we'll probably end up with graphs like we show at the start of the guidelines paper, where we've got escalating costs and no effect on disability. Or we can attend to difficult information and revise our models and hopefully do better, be less wrong. I think the other thing is sometimes we go into our treatments, we develop them, we're enthusiastic about them because we think, this must work, and I've seen it work. But Archie Cochrane sort of reframed it a bit differently and said, the point he was trying to make was it's actually really difficult to change the course of health in the presence of disease, because it's complicated and there's lots of different factors. So one should be delightfully surprised when any treatment at all is effective, and always assume that a treatment is ineffective unless there's evidence to the contrary. And again, that can sound really negative, but it's not about that. It's about recognizing all the ways in which we can be fooled and looking for better information that tries to show us whether we are being fooled or not. And then you have to ask yourself the question, am I interested in continuing to do what I do, or am I interested in getting to a better sense of the truth? So when we did that honesty test way back on day one, which part of the paper do you read? I would say, in an ideal world, I'd go abstract, and it wouldn't matter to me how many people put their hands up, an introduction and discussion. But if I said, methods and results, and everyone put their hand up, we'd be getting closer to a situation where culturally we were doing evidence-based practice. I think the other thing is, we do all this stuff, and, we bang on about evidence and helping people to use it. But actually, in physio, I think we need more people having the conversation and more venues or opportunities for people to discuss evidence rather than just have researchers tell them how to do it. So that sharing of knowledge would be a pretty big deal to making things get better. And of course, thank you everyone for listening. Now, there's only one thing, and that is that there's a feedback form for the course, which I'm going to give to Sarah to send out. So we don't do it now, I think, because we've got things going forward online. But if people who've been on the course or engaged want to just give us their feedback, you know, positive, negative, whatever you thought about the course, then that would be fantastic. And then finally, I think it might be time for that. Steve, do you want to add anything at all?
No, I mean,
Nothing substantial. However,
I've got this lecture.
where's my stick? No, I guess it probably just goes back to the first lecture on Friday morning, and that's really, it's really just to say that it's not just I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass to say that I'm actually inspired by clinicians that want to engage in that process, because it is a step to make things more difficult. Okay, it is easy enough, whether you're in private practice or in public practice, to go along and not engage with research, to roll along, and you make a perfectly good living out of it, and maybe a better living out of it. But as I said, I think it's, I find it inspiring, and for that reason, aside from being a massive research nerd, really enjoy the opportunity to come and do things like this. So thank you very much, and thank you people in there too.
And thanks to Sandy and Sarah for doing this again and setting up the platform for our to happen, and then organising the tech and fixing the power cut.
Beers and handstands. All right.